Moot is a community-driven platform for iOS, Android, and PC dedicated to gamers who enjoy sharing up-to-date reviews, highlights, and memes about the games they play. Navigate through the different lounges for PUBG, Overwatch, Destiny 2, and more, all while voting on posts and leveling up for sharing and discussing content for the games you love. Check out the link in the description for more information. Moot is running a great giveaway this month for some Siberia headsets from SteelSeries and some other PUBG merchandise, so don't forget to check it out. Hey y'all, Moses here. Today we're talking about Realm Royale, and I wanted to bring you a bit of a beginner's guide, something that I could have used that wasn't available when I first started playing just yesterday when the game came out. So right out of the gate, Realm Royale draws a few comparisons to other Battle Royale titles like Fortnite and a bit with PUBG, I guess, because it's a Battle Royale game, even though PUBG could not be further from this game in both gameplay as well as design. I guess it would be a little bit closer to Fortnite in both style properties as well as the third-person aiming mechanics that you'll be using while you play this game. So, for those of you checking it out from Fortnite, I think you'll be in somewhat familiar territory, but if you're coming from PUBG, maybe this guide will be more tailored towards yourselves than others, but regardless, I'll be treating everyone in fairness. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So Realm Royale is a Battle Royale game in which you jump down out of a little blimp, or Zeppelin, whatever you want to call it, and you select a landing spot just like any other Battle Royale game out on the market right now. So the only thing that's different, well, actually there's lots that's different, but the first thing you'll notice is the class selection screen. Now this is where you're going to be choosing your class for the game. So you have Warrior, Engineer, Assassin, Mage, and Hunter. All have different abilities with different passives. Take a minute to review the tooltips and the skills and that kind of thing for that particular class before selecting it. But ultimately, because you're going to be new as everyone else is, choosing a class is more about personal preference and your kind of style. And then learning the skills will come later in a series of videos where I'll be looking at each individual class because I think it'll be a little bit too much for this specific video. So select your class, and before you know it, you'll be jumping into the game. Now, duos and solos are the only available modes right now, which is fine. Maybe a solo mode will come in the future. But for now, you'll be needing a friend or to just fill in with the random queue and jump right in. So once you select your landing spot, you'll notice on the map, which is reviewed by holding tab by default, that there are little hammers all over the map. Now, those are forges, which are important, but I'll get to those shortly. So as far as your abilities and looting in the early game are concerned, you want to jump in and find buildings which contain chests. Now, the chests have the same chance to drop items as well as armor, abilities, etc. Hopefully in the first bit of the early game, you can find yourself a rifle or a shotgun, really anything to defend yourself in the early game. But if worse comes to worse, that dagger you have in your hands does 400 damage a shot and can easily dispatch an enemy in the early game if you can land the first blows and follow them up from there. So when it comes to attacking opponents, you'll notice that once you do enough damage, they'll turn into a chicken, which is this game's down state. You know, in Fortnite, you'll go down and be revived. In PUBG, you'll go down and be revived. But in this game, you go down as a chicken, and you cannot be revived. The timer has to run out. So you have to evade as a little busted up chicken and try and stay alive. And after the timer expires, you will come back to life with a certain amount of health and armor, depending on what your gear was, and you'll be able to get back in the fight. So as far as the abilities are concerned and the weapons are concerned, they have a tier system. There is the common, which is gray, and then green, which is decent, and then purple, and then ultimately legendary, which is the best tier in the game. Now, there are 4 armor slots. You have your helm, chest, your gloves, as well as your boots, and those will increase your armor pool, which can be maxed out about 1200, which is your matches your health pool. So the maximum total HP you can have is 2400 when fully kitted. You'll also have your ability slots, which can be interchanged with various items you find in the map. Essentially you can change what kind of character and what your abilities are by depending on what you find or forge later on. So if you pick those up, you have your secondary abilities and your primary mobility ability, which is the F key. The F key is always your mobility key. So in the case of the assassin, it's a blink. In the case of the warrior, it's a leap. Engineer is essentially a rocket jump where you jump straight up in the air. So those are always going to be a mobility function for each class, and that's going to always be bound to your F key. So Your second abilities will be things like the turret if you're an engineer, ice block as the mage. They're your utility items, and you can choose between which ones you prefer and pair them up. But really, it's about probably having a survivability as well as a passive offensive ability, depending on your class. So for the engineer, which is my favorite class right now, I often choose the healing totem as well as the sentry, the sentry gun, which is a very useful little passive to have. But let's touch briefly on the different kinds of weapons. All of them are hit scans, save for a few. I believe the projectiles are the rifle, as well as the marksman rifle for the assassin, which is his legendary weapon. But for now, it's just a matter of choosing what weapons you like. The shotgun is always a good choice. The heirloom rifle is a personal favorite of mine. I like to use that for long range. And then really even the revolver, all the weapons are viable because for the most part, you're going to be relying on your legendary weapon. So let's talk about the forge. The forge is the mechanic in this game that is a little bit above and beyond the standard battle royale fare. So like I said, on your map, you'll see all those little hammers floating around, typically centered around cities. That is where the forges are. Now, the forges are used to create your legendary armor, class abilities, and your weapon. Now, I would recommend prioritizing your legendary weapon if you have enough shards. Now, where do shards come from? Shards come from downing and killing enemy players and disenchanting loot that you don't need. So if you open chests, you'll see that there might be items that you just don't need right away or that aren't for you if you've downed an enemy that has class abilities, etc. So if you hit the X key, you'll disenchant them into shards. Now, you can carry up to 200 at any given time, but you're going to use those guys at the forge to create your weapons and abilities. Now, when it comes to the forge itself, every time you go to craft an item, you can only create one per forge. So you can only make one armor piece, one ability, and obviously one weapon, but it doesn't really matter for the weapon because you're only going to make one of them per game anyway. So at that forge, you can make your weapon and your armor, and then you'll have to move on to a different forge if you want to keep making armor and abilities on top of what you already have. So once you start the forge, it's going to take roughly a minute, I believe, to have your item complete. You can also make your potions at the forge as well for a smaller fraction of shards than you would normally use for abilities or armor. Now, the timer is going to be ticking down, but at the same time, a plume of smoke is going to erupt from the top of the forge, which will draw enemies to you. So if someone sees that you're creating an item, they can come and attack you, and if they kill you, they can take your item. Even if they scare you off the forge and they happen to be an enemy of your same class, they can take your items as well. There's only about a 10-second lockout before someone can disenchant or take your items. So keep that in mind when you're forging around the edges of the play zone. Be mindful that players transferring around that area might attack you, and to just be on the defensive there. Now, once you have retained your legendary weapon, which is arguably the best offensive item you can have, you'll notice that there are a few different options. Depending on your class, you want to pair what your legendary weapon is with an alternative. So for the engineer, it's a grenade launcher. You're going to need an heirloom rifle or something that has long-range capability to pair with that, because the close-range capabilities of the grenade launcher are very large. And typically speaking, direct hits with a legendary weapon will do roughly 800 damage. But if you're a marksman, assassin with the marksman rifle, it'll do 1,200 damage. And if you're a hunter, it'll do 1,000 damage. So again, very, very powerful weapons. So I would recommend prioritizing your legendary weapons first. Now, this is a lot of information. So if I'm going quick, don't worry, there's going to be more videos coming explaining the individual classes. I'll get into the nuances of each. I'm just trying to give you a brief overview. So obviously the game will progress and the circle will get smaller and smaller. You'll notice that there is a little blimp dropping chests around. Chests are almost guaranteed to have a legendary item within them. Often it's a weapon of some kind or a class ability. I've seen mostly weapons there. So finding chests is a big priority as well if you can find them. Just because of the nature of the secondary weapon also being powerful will make you a very formidable force. You could be doing potentially 600 or 700 damage per shot for the secondary weapon as well, which will put you in a position to be able to absolutely decimate your opponents. And one thing I forgot to mention that is, very key to the game is that you have a mount. You have a horse that you can use as well to get around the map. You will always be able to outrun the zone on horseback. The default key is Z or Z, depending on your locale. You can jump on your horse and ride it around. It's very good for repositioning during fights. It's only a 1-second cast, and you're on your horse. You can get around and pressure your enemies. It is a very important tool to use that, so don't forget about the mount, even when you're in a gunfight. If you take damage while on horseback, you'll be dismounted, so it's good to attack players on horseback if you want to draw them into a fight or out of position. And you can take any damage will take them off the horse. So very useful tool to know or to use and info to know there when it comes to fighting on horseback. So I think I've hit as many of the beginner topics as I can. I'm going to go in depth on a settings video as well as the class videos after this one. I hope that you guys found some decent information here, or at least it gave you a basic overview of the game as it stands. Just a couple of tips. Just don't be afraid to get into a gunfight. Everyone's going to be new at this game, and if you're just picking it up, you're already on the ground floor. So get out there, have some fun. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for all the class guides that I'm going to be making in the next couple of days. And thank you guys for watching. You can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/wtfmoses if you want to see some Realm Royale gameplay. And you can follow me on Twitter at wtfmoses if you want to see when my videos go live or when the stream goes live. Thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the footage. And until next time, I'll see you out there.